John Edward Fletcher. John Edward Fletcher, 18 January 1941, June 1992, was a British-Australian scholar best known for his research and publications on Athanasius Kircher, as well as several other Germans who had Overview. Education. John Edward Fletcher was born in the industrial city of Bradford in Yorkshire to a printer/soldier father and a millworker mother. There he attended Thornton Grammar School, of which in his final year he became ducks and school captain. He went on as a scholarship holder to read for his BA degree at Queen Mary College, University of London, where he studied under such famous scholars of German as the medievalist A.T. Hatto and the Renaissance and Baroque specialist Leonard Wilson Forster, later Schroeder Professor of German at Cambridge. On graduating, he moved on to the University of Durham to obtain Diploma of Education and then back to the Queen Mary College on a postgraduate scholarship, intending to do his Ph.D. under Dr. Klaus Victor Bach. His first task was to come to grip with Kircher's vast body of writings on most branches of learning of his age, for example, mathematics, astronomy, music, Oriental languages including Egyptian hieroglyphics, which Kircher was certain he had deciphered, but of course hadn't. The second task he and Dr. Bach set was to edit the immense correspondence from and to Kircher. Fletcher succeeded by 1966 in producing an extremely erudite thesis of over 900 pages, somewhere around the size of many of Kircher's own publications. Instruction. Fletcher then emigrated to Australia and took up the position of Senior Teaching Fellow in the Department of German at Monash University. Almost immediately he began to indulge his lifelong passion for books and bibliography. In 1968 he took up the first full lectureship in German Baroque literature in the Department of German at Sydney University and was promoted to senior lecturer a few years later. He was to spend the rest of his life at Sydney University, where he continued his research on Kircher. His study leave was spent often in the British Museum Library, but more often in the Duke Augustus Library in the charming little North German town of Wolfenbüttel, with its notable collection of 16th and 17th century books. Much of his research here was funded by the highly prestigious postdoctoral Alexander von Humboldt Scholarship. He was also invited to organize the library's International Conference on Kircher and to edit the resulting book. Publications. Late life. Soon after his arrival in Sydney, John Fletcher joined the Friends of the University Library, and as a committee member, its treasurer, secretary, and at the time of his death, he was long a member of the Book Collectors' Society of Australia, and was at his death its president and publications editor, having produced his own last book in their series of studies in Australian bibliography. Works by John Fletcher. Kircher. Fletcher, John E. Brief Survey of the Unpublished Correspondence of Athanasius Kircher, S.J. 160280, in Manuscriptor. Roman 13, St. Louis, 1969 pp. 150-60. Fletcher, John E. Johann Marcus Marci writes to Athanasius Kircher, in Janus, Leiden, Eliax, 1972, pp. 97-118. Fletcher, John E. Athanasius Kircher, an seine Beziehungen zum Gelehrten Europa seiner Zeit, in Wolfenbütteler Arbeiten zur Barockforschung, Band 17, 1988. Fletcher, John E. Johann Marcus Marci writes to Athanasius Kircher, in Janus, 59, 1972, pp. 95-118. Fletcher, John E. Athanasius Kircher, A Man Under Pressure, 1988. Fletcher, John E. Athanasius Kircher, and Duke August of Brunswick-Lüneburg, A Chronicle of Friendship, 1988. Fletcher, John E. Athanasius Kircher and His Correspondence, 1988. Fletcher, John E. A Study of the Life and Works of Athanasius Kircher, Germanus Incredibilis, edited by Elizabeth Fletcher. Brill Publications, Amsterdam, 2011. Other: John E. Fletcher, German Books 1501–1800 in Australian Libraries, a survey in Journal of the Australasian Universities Language and Literature Association, Volume 31, 1969, Issue 1, pp. 40–62. John Fletcher, Georg Philipp Harsdorfer, Neuenberg, und Athanasius Kircher, Neuenberg, Verein für Geschichte der Stadt Neuenberg, 1972. John Fletcher and Marlene Norst, German Language Books in the Libraries of Canberra, Melbourne and New South Wales, North Ryde, NSW, Macquarie University, School of Modern Languages, German Section, 1972. John Fletcher, St. James Church, Forest Lodge, A Chronicle of Parish Life, 1877–1977, Forest Lodge, NSW, St. James Church, 1977. Axel Clark, John Fletcher and Robin Marston, eds. Between Two Worlds, Loss of Faith in Late 19th Century Australian Literature, Essays by Vincent Buckley, et al., Sydney, Wentworth Books, 1979. John Fletcher and Rose Smith, A Short Title Catalogue of 16th-Century Printed Books Held in Libraries and Private Collections in New South Wales, with a List of Provenances, Sydney, Library Council of New South Wales, 1979. Johannes H. Voigt, John Fletcher, and John A. Moses, eds. New Beginnings, Germans in New South Wales and Queensland, a commemorative volume. Neuanfange, Deutsch in New South Wales and Queensland, Ein Festschrift, Stuttgart, Institute for Foreign Cultural Relations / Institut für Auslandsbeziehungen, 1983. John Edward Fletcher, John Digitardi, printer, publisher, and photographer, Sydney, Book Collectors Society of Australia, 1984. John Edward Fletcher, German Manuscripts 1538–1864 in the Libraries of Sydney, a descriptive catalogue, Sydney, Book Collectors Society of Australia, 1988. John Fletcher, Poetry Books and Poetry Broadsheets published from 1950 to 1980 in South Wales, a catalogue, Sydney, Book Collectors Society of Australia, 1989. John Fletcher, The Story of William Nathaniel Pratt, 1847–1933, and the Poems That Weren't Published in 1917. Sydney, Book Collectors Society of Australia, 1990. John Edward Fletcher, The Jane Windeyer Bookplate Collection in the University of Sydney Library, a catalogue, Sydney, Book Collectors Society of Australia, 1990. John Fletcher, Frederick Sefton Dilmer, From Herman Grimm and Arthur Street into Ezra Pound, Sydney, Book Collectors Society of Australia, 1991. John Edward Fletcher, Herman Lau and His Sojourns, 1854–1859 in Sydney, Galburn, Braidwood, Araluen, Moruya, and Shoalhaven, Sydney, Book Collectors Society of Australia, 1991.